Hey everybody, how's it going? We got Chris and Josh here coming from a rainy Colorado today with the fourth episode of the Dueling Banjos Sportscast. Hey man, how's it going today?
Not bad at all, man. I'm glad to not be working, and I'm a little bummed. Nothing says spring like 40 degrees and rain. I guess that's Colorado, though.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. We've been having rain all night. Everything's kind of soaking up with water. Streets are all flooded. It's kind of a nice day just to be sitting in here talking, though, which I guess is good for us.
Yeah, we got NBA playoffs going on right now. We got all the baseball going on. I guess this is just a good excuse to sit on the couch and do nothing today.
Well, maybe not nothing. Try and make it sound like we know what we're talking about a little bit. But before we get into the sports stuff, man, you got anything you want to talk about? I know it's been kind of a funny week. We got a little late on the podcast this week. Sunday instead of Saturday. I know that the sports world is good, but you got anything on your mind? Something you want to talk about?
No, man. I just wanted to say, just like everybody else, I hate my bosses. So that sums up my week.
I think everybody can agree with that. No matter what you do in this world, you're probably going to hate your bosses, so, something to live with, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good thing we have sports to kind of numb the pain of a work week, so let's go ahead and get started on that.
Well, okay, let's jump in on the basketball playoffs here. We got at least 4 games in on these, and my question for you with the basketball playoffs is, are they playing out like you thought they were going to?
I think they're playing out a little too good, actually. Most of these series are 3-0 right now, and Golden State sealed the deal with the win last night. The Nets pulled off a victory I didn't think they were going to get. I thought they were going to get shut out.
Well, one thing that they're definitely the Pelicans. It was kind of a funny series to watch because I think people had high hopes for the Pelicans, and man, they just could not handle Golden State.
Yeah, Game 3 to go into the fourth quarter up by 20 points, and then have Steph Curry and the Warriors come back and force that game into overtime, and then it wasn't really close in overtime. That's heartbreaking. And they played good last night too. They played good defense. I felt like they were chasing Steph Curry off the line, but when it came down to the final minutes in the fourth quarter, there was Curry again. Passing the ball when he needed to, but taking a lot of step back shots that were obviously going in because it's Steph Curry, the MVP, and so yeah, the Pelicans. It was nice to see them in the playoffs. I wish they would have got that Game 3 win. It would have showed a little something, some guts for a young team, but they'll be back next year.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I was actually watching the end of that game, and I actually couldn't really believe it. I was like, this is insane that they're going to let them come back from such a high advantage that they had, and you could just tell from that point that they were probably done.
Yeah, and I think it was for the playoffs, this first round being so boring. I think that's been one of the better series, just because the Pelicans put up a good fight in well, at least the last 2 games. The first 2 weren't really that close, but at least in the last 2, they put some good defense on the floor. Anthony Davis, I'm surprised his shooting. He can shoot from just about anywhere. I think he was chucking up a couple threes too. So that was surprising to see. I think they'll get more pieces in that team. They'll get a little bit better bench, and we'll see them again.
The other game that I was a little bit intrigued by was the Grizzlies and the Trailblazers. You got a 4th and 5th seed going against each other. And the 5th seed's actually up 3-0. Did you think that was going to happen, or was that something that shocked you too?
No, it was just a goofy. Portland's in a weaker division, so Memphis had the better record, but Portland, being in the division they were first in the division, so it just gave them a higher seeding. I think they should probably just eliminate the stupid seeding in the NBA playoffs. And I think this first round has shown that the NBA needs to do something about the way they do this. I think they could probably get rid of the conferences in the playoffs and put the 16 best teams in, regardless of conference.
Well, and sports in general has been talking about this, about the seedings and going East and West Conference. In basketball, you could tell that the Eastern Conference just was not nearly as powerful as the Western Conference was. So you definitely have teams that weren't nearly as good getting into the playoffs. So you might not be seeing the best games out there.
Yeah, and I think all these games show to see Boston in there, and it's kind of the same thing as watching the Pelicans with the Celtics right now. Bunch of young guys, they're playing really gritty. In the first two games, the Cavs let them have a little bit of light and let them hang into those games going into the fourth quarter, which can be dangerous. But the last game, LeBron took over, and you could tell he was done with this. He wants to get a little rest in. Brooklyn getting in the playoffs is a joke. I think it'd be much better if there's more Western Conference teams in there and they would put up a good fight.
Well, Brooklyn being in there is it's kind of showing a little bit of the inexperience of the teams that are coming in that you've been talking about, because they actually won a game against the Hawks, who are a much better team. So not only do we have teams that are maybe a little weak, as it were, there are also teams in there that have inexperience that maybe are having a hard time in the playoffs for that reason.
Yeah, it'd be more fun to see a team like Oklahoma City in the playoffs rather than Brooklyn. And I really like the Celtics. I like the tradition, legacy, all that stuff. But having another Western Conference team in there that missed out of the playoffs would probably be better for the sport too.
Well, yeah, because especially when you look at the Cavs and the Celtics playing, there's not a whole lot of thought there that the Celtics even had an inkling of a chance, and the 3-0 record definitely shows that. So, I mean, it's really not that fun to watch, and so you're kind of losing interest in it as it goes.
Yeah, the second round should be a lot better, but I think the one thing in that series in particular that's been fun to watch is even though LeBron took over in that third game, the first two games he didn't really have to do anything. He did what he likes to do, basically playing a point guard position, facilitating the ball, passing it around, creating space on the floor, and letting Kyrie take the big shots. So that's been fun to watch Kyrie Irving, and he's draining all these ridiculous shots deep off the three-point line. He had that, I think it was in the first game, he had that half-court three-pointer because of the clock issues. He thought the shot clock was at 20 seconds. He looked down, and they changed it back to 2 seconds. He gets the inbound pass and has to shoot it from half-court, and it went in.
Well, and he's one of the key players. I think the way that they've been playing this series, LeBron's given him a little bit more to do in the games, and I think that if they can keep that going and those two keep playing as well as they are, they might be a team to watch out for in the finals.
Yeah, in the last game too, it was fun to see Kevin Love finally find a little bit of a role, and we'll see if that continues in the playoffs, to see LeBron kick it out to him when he needs to, and he can take those threes, and he can drive to the basket too, and get it's been fun to watch him last game understand where LeBron wanted him to be and get that ball in. I think he's finally understanding too that him and Mozgov need to be in the paint when they're playing defense to get those rebounds. So I think that's going to help him down the line too, is having Love understand what's going on and play with LeBron and Kyrie.
So what are you thinking on the Raptors Wizards series? I mean, you're talking about the Wizards coming up 3-0, and I kind of feel like you were thinking the Raptors were going to take this one, but they kind of fallen short a little bit.
I thought the Wizards were going to win the series, but I didn't think it would be 3-0. I thought this was going to be one that went 5-6 games, maybe even a seventh game. But it's just kind of surprising to see the Raptors having such a problem with them. I didn't believe that the Wizards were all that good of a team, especially coming down the stretch. They lost a lot of games coming down to the end, and I thought it was, you want to be in a winning mindset and have good tempo and all that stuff going into the playoffs. So it's kind of surprising to see where they're at right now, 3-0 on that series.
Well, what do you think? Do you think that the Wizards are a team that maybe we should watch a little bit harder in the second round, maybe see how they play? Maybe they're a little bit more of a force in the playoffs than we thought they were.
I think they could probably make some noise, and I think them getting, if they can shut out the series 4-0, get some rest, I think that'd be a pain for any team they would face next. But that's probably about it. Maybe steal a couple games from a team, make them play a little bit longer, which can affect the playoffs down the road too. But I don't think they're going to make a big push.
So this one, I'm just going to lead it in and let you run with it. I know this one's kind of a big one for the playoffs. It's in the first round, maybe the biggest story. Spurs Clippers. What do you think?
Dude, that's a tough series to watch right now. When you think of the Spurs, you're thinking fundamental basketball and making the right shots and everything. Those two teams are just running up and down the court, chucking balls up at the basket and hoping they go in. It's been really tough to watch. It's really sloppy. A lot of fouling in that series too. It seems like you get a little bit of rhythm in the game and you're finally enjoying it a little bit, and then a foul, and then sloppy play, and then another foul, and then they get into a rhythm, and then another foul, and then more sloppy play. So that's been a tough series to watch. I still think San Antonio comes out of it, but now I'm having doubts about them getting to the conference finals. I think if they need to keep, if the Lakers or if the Clippers make this a series and they go 6 or 7 games, I don't think that bodes well for San Antonio. I think they need obviously they're a little bit older team. I think they need the rest. But I'm never going to count out the Spurs for anything.
Well, and a lot of people are saying that the Spurs they've just kind of lost their edge, and Tim Duncan's not the player he used to be, and Popovich isn't coaching them as well as that he should be, and they're just not the team that they've been in the last couple of years. But as you said, they're also a team that you can't count out no matter where they're at, just because of the leadership that they have on the team. But a 3 versus 6 seed, it seems a little bit more interesting that the Clippers are actually playing decent against them. I'm still picking the Spurs to win it, though.
Yeah, it was fun game 3 to see Duncan turn on the Wayback Machine. He was taking those step backs and shooting the ball well and getting into the paint and taking some hard fouls. He was actually making Blake Griffin look kind of funny on some of those possessions on there. It's fun to see him turn back the Wayback.
You mean even funnier than he usually looks?
Yeah, Blake Griffin is definitely a goofy dude. I don't know if, and I was talking about this the other day with somebody, I don't know if I dislike the Clippers or the Lakers more now. I mean, there's something about Blake Griffin that just irritates me. He's kind of like my Cardinals of the NBA for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can say that. And the Lakers have been really poor the last couple seasons, so, I mean, there's not really anything to hate about them now because they're not really relevant to the basketball world.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. But, it's Blake Griffin.
Yeah, you can only dunk your way through so much until it just becomes, here or there. Let's jump to my favorite game of the first round. We got my guy Harden in his Rockets going up against the Mavericks, and say what you will, even though they're the 7th seed, I expected to see a little more out of the Mavericks than they put forth. But Harden has still been crushing it, just the same way that Curry's been crushing it. So I know that's tough to stop, but 3-0, come on, Mavericks.
Yeah, I didn't think this series would turn out this way. I knew the Rockets were probably going to get the edge on this one, obviously, but I didn't think the Mavericks. They played good in Game 3, and it was heartbreaking to see the way they lost and see Dirk try to bring that team back on his shoulders. and it wasn't enough. When you're looking at facing the Rockets just with Harden is hard enough. He's going to score a ton of points and get the ball around and get good shots for everybody. But with Howard coming back, it's even more of a deadly team. I didn't think it was going to make that big of a difference, but to see him in the paint, be a presence. The Mavericks sometimes look like they want to challenge him, and then he blocks a shot, and then they'll spend the next quarter avoiding him. Seeing Howard get those nasty rebounds, get some putback buckets in the paint, that's been cool to watch. I think that's going to be really good for the Rockets coming down the stretch. I think that makes them an even deadlier team than they were going into this.
Well, and that's, anytime you got veteran presence like that, you really have to take it a little bit higher regard than, someone who like Kyrie Irving, who's still, kind of a rookie as it was. And so you get somebody like Dwight Howard back, and it changes the whole dynamic of the game, especially for a team like the Rockets, who's been really just focused on one person the whole season because everybody was out. But now, in the perfect time in the playoffs, you're getting a little bit more of your team back, and maybe even pushing yourself a little bit better than you were.
Yeah, and he does with Howard being back. He's able to create space on the floor too. If you got Howard in the paint, generally two guys are going to go to him. That opens up a spot on the 3-point line for maybe a guy like Harden or whoever's out there. I know Chandler Parsons has been injured. He's a great shooter, and when they get him back, that'll even open up the floor a little bit more. But yeah, I really thought the Mavericks were going to put up a better fight on this one.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of interesting too with the way that Golden State is set up. Steph Curry has been playing well, but he's not the whole team. They still got players everywhere. Whereas you've got the Rockets, who had Harden for most of the season. Well, now they've got Dwight Howard. Do you think that if it came down to it in the conference finals, that if the Rockets were to make it to the Warriors, that we would have a really tough series?
Yeah, I don't know what would happen to that, especially with Howard being back. Watching Steph Curry last night put up shots over big men was good to see. I mean, I don't know if putting Dwight Howard on Curry is going to happen on it, but teams have tried it before. Try to stick the big guy in Curry and see if they can knock down shots from him. I don't think the Rockets will do that. I think it's going to be fun to see if that happens. See Curry and Harden go head to head. I think it's going to be the same thing. They're going to just be chucking up buckets everywhere, hoping to outscore each other.
Well, and, I the only reason I asked you that question was because I'm a Harden guy. You're a Curry guy. I'd really like to see the two teams go at it in the conference finals. But that's just a hope for me. I'd like to see it. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but I think it would just be interesting to see the two teams go and potential MVPs aside, just fight it out, see who's going to that finals.
Yeah, and I think they're built a little bit more similarly than people would think. I think you got Bogut in there as a big man in Golden State that can push around to Howard. And you've got a guy came from the Nuggets. Missing out on him. But you got a couple big men down there in Golden State that can take care of business and maybe fight around with Howard. It's funny when you watch Howard on the court go after rebounds. The dude doesn't even have to jump. He just sticks his arms up, and he's still rebounding over everybody. But yeah, Harden and Curry going point for point. I think that'd be cool to watch.
So, what, if anything, should we watch for in the next couple games or the next couple days in basketball? What's your calls on that? What should we look for? Upsets? What should we look for?
I think in one of the series we didn't get into, the Bulls-Bucks series, I think the Bucks getting a win on that maybe gives them a little bit of energy. Especially when you're looking at going against a team like Chicago, and one of the knocks on Coach Thibodeau is that he runs his players into the ground. And I think if you give a young team like the Bucks a little bit of life, like they did, Rose missing a shot at the end of the game there. You give the team like that life, you open yourself up for maybe another upset or two and making that series go longer than it needed to. I think the Bulls, obviously, every team wants a 4-0 series, but I think the Bulls needed it probably more than any other team that was going to win their series. The Bulls needed that rest.
Yeah, you know what? The Bucks, I like them. I saw their thing on TV the other day is they fear the deer. That made me laugh. I really liked it, but when it comes down to it, I mean, they did get the win, but I don't think they're going to win the series. They're not going to push it to a game 7, that's for sure. But yes, I agree that the Bulls definitely probably would have liked it a little more than everybody else just to get that extra rest. But I don't really have them going much further into the playoffs, so we'll see how that plays out.
And let's face the facts: the more time Derrick Rose is on the floor, the higher percentage he's going to re-injure something or injure something and be out again.
Yeah, that's his MO for sure. So, they want to keep his playing time down to a minimum.
Hey man, talking about keeping playing time to a minimum, let's talk a little bit of Tim Tebow right now. What's your thoughts on what's going on with the Eagles? What is Chip Kelly doing? We got to figure this out.
Dude, I tweeted this out early on after it came out that he was getting a 1-year deal. I have no idea what he's trying to do. I put a little thought into it. The only thing I could think of was that he's going to try and move ahead and get Mariota, and then you could have the 1-2 punch, kind of, maybe, with him and Tebow doing 2 different read option kind of quarterbacks in the same... It baffles me, man. Tim Tebow hasn't played in like 2 years. And even when he was playing, he wasn't playing. I mean, the dude's not a quarterback that you can rely on. Can't throw a ball. You tell me what he's doing. I don't know.
Yeah, we were tweeting back and forth, and there's no way Tim Tebow's trade bait. So what's the plan with him? I mean, I'm sure Chip Kelly would like to go up and get Mariota, but... man, that's way too many first-round draft picks. You have to spend to get up to the second spot on there. They're talking about the Raiders wanting to trade out of their 4. I don't think Mariota's going to be there at 4 unless some crazy thing is going down between Tennessee and San Diego, where Phillip Rivers ends up in Tennessee. But then that leaves San Diego wanting to pick Mariota. So I don't see how the Eagles go up and get him. Now, as a Cowboys fan, I'm super pumped about this situation because you've got Sam Bradford, you've got Mark Sanchez, and you got Tim Tebow on the Eagles. Like, if that's the 3 they're going to pick from, I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about your division, that's for sure. You'll still lose to the Packers in the playoffs, but that's beside the point.
No, if we have refs making right calls about fumbles on the goal line, that'd be a different story.
Yeah, we don't really need to get into that because Chicago would have something to say about that too.
Now, what was I've heard a lot of stuff over the past week. People are trying to, they're doing the same thing we are. They're trying to figure out what's going on with Tebow, and I've heard brought up a lot with the NFL. Needing to change the extra point. Maybe Tim Tebow is that guy that runs that offense on 2-point conversions, which isn't a terrible idea. I mean, the kid scores in the red zone.
Yeah, and he's essentially a running back that can hike the football. I mean, if you put him in a 2-point conversion situation where he can maybe take a snap and bounce it in, or he's still a big dude, and he's quote unquote been working the last couple years trying to get his throws down. Who knows? But when it comes down to it, I just don't think that he's ever proven himself to be, that efficient. And especially being out of the game as long as he has been, I just don't see him coming back and making that much of an impact. Far from having a coach who can really, make miracles happen.
Yeah, as a 2-point conversion guy, or whatever the NFL goes to, Tebow running that, I don't think is a terrible thing. I think he's on the field. You're obviously going to have to account for him. I think he's a tough guy to try to game plan for if that's the situation he's used in. if the situation is he's the starting quarterback, there's not a whole lot of hard game plan to go with that, right? You cover his receivers a little bit and keep him in the pocket, and obviously he's probably going to chuck a ball or two into the ground. He's probably going to chuck a couple to the wrong guy. So
the only thing that I think that he does have going for him is here in Denver, he did do a lot of things that made people kind of shake their head. He did have the ability to make things happen that shouldn't have happened. So given that, there's a chance he might be able to come in and just throw people off enough to make some good plays. But if you're Chip Kelly, you got to have something in your head that's, he's either a genius or an idiot, one of the two.
Well, there's something to be said for Bill Belichick going out to Oregon a couple times to see the innovation that Chip Kelly was putting onto the field. So there's obviously a little bit of genius there if Bill Belichick's trying to figure out what you're doing. But man, this right now to everybody else, this thing does not make sense at all. I wanted to get your take. We'll segue into a little bit of draft talk real quick. All this talk about Tebow and it's kind of a running joke, and people trying to figure out, okay, he can't be the starting quarterback. What's he doing there? What does that say about Marcus Mariota? Right? Same type of offense. He's obviously got a better arm than Tebow. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But same thing, maybe can't run a pro-style offense. Maybe he's scrambling too much.
Well, it comes down to this. Mariota's never taken he's never been a lineup behind the center quarterback, so pro style's out. He's never had to call plays in the huddle. He's always just been one of those Tebow style quarterbacks who we've seen doesn't make it in the NFL because they just get run over. And you know what? I have higher hopes for Mariota because he is a little bit more of a stand-up guy. But I just don't see him making it. I think he's going to get into the NFL and have his world flipped upside down because I just don't think he's going to be ready for what they're throwing at him, especially in comparison to what he saw in college.
Yeah, I would love to see those two succeed, meet in the Super Bowl. I mean, that would be awesome. Both stand-up guys off the field, great leaders on the field. But that's not going to happen. What does that say, though, about the NFL's process? I mean, for people to be talking about Mariota going 2, even though you're sitting here saying that, he's the exact same thing as Tebow. We've seen this before in RG3. Let's throw him in there. What does that say about the process, though?
Well, I don't know if it says much about the process, but I can tell you it does say something about the draft quality that we have this year. If you're talking about Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston going 1 and 2, then there's just not a whole lot of talent floating around in the quarterback position, and most of your mock drafts will tell you there really isn't. And so the process is what it is. When Tebow came in, he was highly regarded because he played so well in Florida. But then, like we said, with him, with RG3, it's just hope versus, how good somebody's actually going to be once they get into the NFL.
I think it speaks more about the need to have that franchise quarterback and teams being desperate enough at that position to take a gamble yet again on a guy we've seen before a couple times.
Well, that's fine. The franchise quarterback is yes, teams do want that. Green Bay has Aaron Rodgers. New England has Tom Brady. Dallas has Tony Romo. Denver has Peyton Manning. Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees. There's a ton of franchise quarterbacks out there. Notice I left out Jay Cutler.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Why would you put him in there?
But listen, how many of those guys, how many of those franchise quarterbacks were taken number 1 in the NFL draft? Well, Peyton Manning would be one, but that was back in the in a different time.
Well, he was a can't miss. Like if you were
prodigy, for sure.
Same thing with Andrew Luck. You knew if you were drafting him, you were getting a guy who was going to get it done.
Which is cool because Andrew Luck is turned into everything that he should have been because he was that good. Can you tell me that Marcus Mariota is anything like Andrew Luck's potential in the NFL? No. Can you tell me that Jameis Winston? No. So maybe look in the later parts of the draft and find somebody who you think is actually gonna or could be a good quarterback and groom them up. All these quarterbacks that are going in the first rounds and getting thrown out the first season trying to be a franchise quarterback doesn't work. You gotta bring them up and you gotta turn them into something that you want them to be, rather than try and force them into something.
Yeah, and I think that's the one part of the process that bothers me. These teams are so desperate for that franchise quarterback. They draft him and they throw him out in the field, and there's nobody develops players anymore. You're expected to come in, you're expected to be drafted and contribute to the team and be that guy all the time. Nobody takes the time to grow players anymore. Those late round guys actually get a better shot because the coaching staff is working with them, fine-tuning them, trying to fill roster spots, and guys can get in that way. But these guys that go in the first round, there's too much expected of them. Ideally, you draft a quarterback, you want him to sit 1, 2, maybe 3 years and kind of figure it out. I mean, when you look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers, maybe he would have been ready out of the gate, but sitting all that time on the bench in Green Bay and watching Favre play, I know Favre did nothing to help him necessarily, but watching how Favre ran things and kind of those cues, and maybe even a little bit of how not to do things, how not to turn over the ball and stuff like that.
Right, and you can say the same thing with Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady sat behind Doug Flutie for how long before he finally came in and took his job, and now the guy's going to go down as one of the best quarterbacks that we've seen in the modern era. So, yeah, it just doesn't seem right to me that they're going to put all this emphasis on, taking a quarterback 1 and 2 when you're probably just not going to get anything good out of it.
Well, it's funny, these GMs are the ones labeling guys like Manning and Luck, these can't-miss players. And at the same time, they're the ones turning around. They're the ones desperate for these guys. If you understand these are once in a generation type players, why wouldn't you understand that you needed to take time to develop everybody else?
Well, and that goes back to something I said, I think, in the first episode. If I had to draft somebody for my team in the first round, I'm going to take somebody who's going to help me out more than trying to get somebody who's the first round number 1 pick quarterback. Why not take an offensive lineman? If they're going to help your team right away and they're going to be a stud at their position, then who cares if it's a quarterback or not? You can find them. You just have to be willing to put in the time to groom them for what you want them to be.
Yeah, and it goes back. It goes back to the teams not wanting to develop. Everybody needs to win right now, and there's no patience on that. I like what you're talking about is slowly building a good team. Establishing good lines, and then filling in those star spots down the road with draft picks. Maybe pick up a couple free agents here and there. But there's just not time in the NFL for that. Everybody's got to win right now.
Exactly, and that's the unfortunate part is everybody does want to win right now. So you've got all these teams trying to win, and let's face it, you only get one winner. I mean, there's only one winner every year, so the odds are against you from the start. So why not put your best foot forward, try and make the best team that you can, and not rely on these players who just haven't turned out in the last few years, and maybe give yourself a chance that way versus trying to get these high power quarterbacks and all these people who aren't contributing to the team.
Yeah, that's what sucks for these teams is the fans expect to win. So you got a team like Tampa Bay with that first pick who has to take Jameis Winston, right? Because he's going to be the most ready, supposedly, to run an NFL offense. And, man, that's hard to swallow. If I'm the GM in Tampa Bay, I don't want to pick Winston. You almost have to, though. You're not going to get out. If Winston down the road turns out to be everything that he thinks he's going to be, then you missed out on it. You're out of a job anyway for missing that pick. It's just, I think it's a mess.
Well, and let me put it into this sense of terms here. Imagine if you're Cleveland or you're Oakland, your team has been terrible. Yeah, you really don't have a shot at anything. Why would you go, if you're Oakland, who I think is actually making a really good choice this year, they're trying to trade out of their 4th pick because they know they're not going to get anything they're not going to win the Super Bowl this year because they drafted somebody in the 1st round at number 4. So what are they doing? They're trying to either get somebody later in that round and an extra pick, or they're trying to trade for somebody who is proven themselves to be a good player. That's a perfect way to do it. If you're Oakland or you're Cleveland or these teams that have been in the bottom of the leagues, then why not do that? You're already losing. Why not try and build yourself something better than a maybe hit or miss player who isn't going to really make much of a difference for a team who stinks anyway?
Yeah, I wholly agree with that. Building the team from the inside and everything. I think the one problem with that, though, is down the road, as you're building that team and you're getting better, you don't have the shot at those high-end draft picks. So if you're Cleveland and you're building a team like that, which they're not, I think they're going to go crazy and try to do something to grabbing one of these top quarterbacks again. But I think if they were on the bottom, they built a team like that, then you don't have the chance at that flash in the pan quarterback down the road. It's just, I don't know, it's a hit or miss process either way. But I'm with you. I think you should build that team up. I love what Oakland's trying to do, getting out of that spot as well. Now it's Oakland. They're going to find a way to mess up whatever draft picks they do get out of trading down. But
well, and that's, that's kind of neither here nor there. If you're Cleveland, why not try and get Sam Bradford? Or get one of these guys who's proven himself to be a halfway decent quarterback, and then, I don't know, maybe let Johnny Manziel tutor under him for a couple years. I still think Johnny Manziel's got some pretty good talent. Maybe not a star quality quarterback, but if you actually got him to get focused, sit behind a veteran who knows what he's doing, maybe he might be able to get you somewhere in a few years.
Yeah, I think that's the tough thing for these teams. Is it's going to take a few years to figure out what the actual answers are and what the results are. But I want to go from a few years out. I need to talk to you about something that needs to happen within the next week or so. So I'm planning a little bit of a barbecue. I like to get out and grill.
Nice.
And of course you're invited, absolutely. But I needed your thoughts on sides, and I'm a little torn up about it. It obviously needs to be potato based. I kind of wanted to know what your draft on a burger side would be.
Oh, draft on a burger side. Huh. Well, a draft. So we got, right off the top of my head, I got 4 spots, right? I'm going to go with number 1, the French fry. Because who doesn't like a good, solid French fry with your burger? That's probably the best one out there. Number 2, probably going to go, I don't know, tater tots. Because I really like tater tots. Who doesn't like tater tots? They go good with everything. Number 3, maybe number 1, who knows? We got the potato chip. It's crunchy. It's potato chip. Everybody likes potato chips. Can't go wrong with that. And probably number 4 would be potato salad. Because, it's potato. It's in a salad. Goes pretty good with the burger. What more could you ask for?
All right. I like 3 of those choices. I think you have to throw potato salad out because it has the word salad in it. And I know that might be unfair, and I know people enjoy the occasional salad, but it has salad in it. I ain't eating it. So I'm throwing potato salad out. I'm not picking him if I'm GM of this barbecue. What's tough for me is between...
So you're calling potato salad Tim Tebow? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, man, he's kind of that, he's that funky thing, and just because he's got potato in the name, he's trying to work his way in there. You put QB behind Tebow's name, and he's a quarterback for some reason. So yeah, potato salad's out for me. I'm not drafting him. Too many off the field issues, I guess. Trying to be someone who's not. What's tough for me is trying to pick between the potato chip and the French fry. And I guess when you get down into it, you gotta define what potato chip is. Because if potato chip is a ruffle with all the ridges and everything, I'm probably gonna go with the French fry. But if it's a Lay's potato chip, just a nice, crisp, flat potato chip, I'm all over that, man.
That's funny because I actually have potato chips exactly in number 3, probably where they should be. They're great, but you just have no substitute for a good old-fashioned French fry. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna kind of shock you a little bit. If I'm the GM of this barbecue, I'm trading up and to get tater tot number 1. I'm taking tater tot. It's proven. It's gonna work, and it performs every time it's out there. It's crunchy. It's a little bit, you get to dip it in a bunch of different things. It tastes good. That's what I'm taking for my first pick.
I like the guts you have on that one, but I think you're almost like Indianapolis if they had picked RG3 over Andrew Luck on that one. Because tater tots look good. They're fantastic. Everybody agrees they can play, right? But at some point they're going to fall apart on you. You bite into them and they sit out there for a little bit. They start to lose their construction. They start falling apart on you. So I think that's kind of a crazy pick, dude.
Well, it might be crazy, but you know what? Crazier things have happened. I mean, at least I'm not out there picking potato salad to go number 1. I mean, that would just be crazy. Everybody, we'd really like to know what you'd like to have at your barbecue next to your burger, French fry, tater tot, potato chip, potato salad. Give us a shout. Let us know. We'd like to see which one of these is getting drafted first.
All right, aside from the sides at this barbecue, hot dogs might make a special appearance, and I mentioned hot dogs because I want to get into a little baseball talk with you. Tell me what's going on with baseball. Tell me who the hot teams are. Give me some stats. Show me what's going on.
Baseball, well, we're about 20 games into the season, which is roughly about an eighth of the games that we'll see. And it's still a little early. We don't know, what's going to happen, but I do have some teams that have been playing really well that I'd like to talk about, and maybe some teams that we should look at who might be a little better than you think they're going to be this year. The AL starting out, you got the very popular East, AL East. You got Boston, you got the Yankees, you got the Rays, all big market teams. Boston and New York are actually tied right now with Tampa Bay. They're all 10-8, and the teams have been playing really, really well. We talked a little bit about it before. Alex Rodriguez has been kind of stepping it up out there. It'll be interesting to see, especially with Boston and New York, who haven't been in the past couple seasons been playing as well. It'll be interesting to see if they can hang this year. Once again, it's a little early to tell how things are going to shake up, but they've been playing well so far, and that's nice to see. In the AL Central, Kansas City, World Series last year, they lost to the Giants. Kind of a heartbreaker for them. But you know what? They've come back this year with a fire. They're sitting at 12-4. Which is an excellent record, just above Detroit, who's sitting at 12-6. Detroit's always going to be one of those teams that's in the run. They're just a really good team. They've got great pitching, and so they're going to be sitting there right underneath KC. So it'll be interesting to see how those two teams duke it out over the course of the season, especially when you're talking about your third place team in the AL Central is Minnesota, sitting at 7-10. So those two are definitely going to be at the top of the AL or Central, and it's just interesting to see which one of them comes out ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the surprise teams, we were talking about it earlier, is the Mets. Tell me why they're on top right now.
The Mets have been playing really, really well. They have the best record in baseball right now, sitting at 14-4, and they're just playing all around baseball. The pitching has been good. They've been Solid in the defense. The batting has been really well, and when you got a team that's clicking the way that their team is, they're really hard to beat. The only thing I have with the Mets is, are they going to be able to sustain that for the length of the season? And I don't think they will, but I do think that they're going to be able to at least make an effort this year to maybe get into the playoffs, something they haven't done in quite a while.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I like what you were saying about Detroit too. The Mets probably don't have the firepower to keep going into the season. I want to go back to the East real quick. Do you think those three teams hang out there all season, or do you think a team like Baltimore kind of sneaks in and takes over that division?
You know what? A team like Baltimore, maybe not. There are some teams, though, that I think that you're going to start to see as you get towards the middle of the season. I think some of these teams that are up top who have been playing well so far are going to start to run into injury problems, maybe. Their pitchers are going to get tired. Something's going to happen that's going to flip-flop these standings. So I don't think right now you're probably not going to see Boston in the top of the division. KC might be able to hang out up there up top. The AL West is probably going to be the Angels, because the West out there isn't really a good division for teams, especially when you're talking they got Houston up top right now. The Astros just aren't that good. So
is Oakland going to make another run at it?
They might. It's hard to say. I don't know that they have what it takes to get up there. But once again, when you're talking the AL West, it's really anybody's game, so they might.
Speaking of guys leading divisions, let's talk a little Cardinals baseball.
Oh, Jesus. Why you got to do this to me? No, I get it. St. Louis is actually playing really, really well right now. They're 12-4 in the NL Central, just above Chicago, who's 9-7, and Pittsburgh, who's 10-8. One thing that I do want to point out with the Cardinals is they did just put Adam Wainwright on the DL for 15 days. He has an Achilles problem that he's dealing with. So that might hurt them a little bit because he is kind of like their ace pitcher. And I can only hope, because I dislike him, nothing against Wainwright. I think he's an excellent pitcher. But I would like to see them kind of fall down a little bit, especially since the Cubs have been playing fairly well this season.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals probably got lucky with Wainwright having to do this at the front end of the season as opposed to coming down the stretch and maybe having to be competitive with a team like Pittsburgh coming down to the end there and not have Wainwright going. So I think it's pretty lucky for them right now. Let's talk a little NL West. I don't think it's a surprise that the Dodgers are on top. I think it's probably more of a surprise that the Giants aren't up there.
Well, the Giants have been playing actually really sketchy baseball. Their pitchers haven't been doing very well. It's kind of a thing that's been surfacing is they don't really play well in odd number years, which is kind of a silly superstition kind of thing. But history has actually kind of proven that on odd number years, their team doesn't do very well, and they're kind of showing that right now. But the Dodgers being on top, that's no surprise. They spend the most money out of just about any team in baseball from year to year. And Adrian Gonzalez has been just crushing it. Their defense has been really good. Their pitching, Clayton Kershaw, he got roughed up for the first couple games. But after that, he got his act together, and he's been pitching really well. They're going to be a tough team to beat. They just came in and swept the Rockies, and then the Giants actually came in and swept them. So it's going to be an interesting one with the NL West this year, especially because a majority of the first 25 games is all against the NL West playing the NL West opponents. So you're going to see a lot of these NL West teams playing the rest of the NL for the whole season and then coming back and playing a few games. It's kind of a goofy situation for those guys, but it'll make for an interesting end to the season, I think.
All right, so let's go. We hit on it a little bit earlier. Let's go back to the East. we're talking about the Mets not being there at the end, probably falling off. Who do you think takes over?
I actually think Atlanta's gonna be at the top of that division come the end of the season. They've got a really solid team going. They're not too far behind them. The one that actually surprises me, though, is the Washington Nationals. We talked about it in the last episode. Their pitching staff is crazy. They got such a really good pitching staff, but they're sitting at 7-11 now, and their pitching hasn't been very good at all, which is kind of an interesting to see. I don't know why that is, but I think they might rebound and come back up too. So I think Atlanta and Washington will be your two people to watch. And I also think Pittsburgh is another one to watch in the Central. We'll see if St. Louis can keep it going or if they're going to kind of fall off a little bit.
I wanted to get your take on something, kind of getting away from the standings and the numbers and everything. You being kind of a baseball purist type guy, loves the game. I wanted to get your thoughts on what happened with the White Sox and Royals with that brawl. I think personally it's kind of ridiculous that baseball hasn't done anything about this benches clearing. I don't think it would have gotten as big if everybody still had to sit down, couldn't get back onto the field on there. I think it just caused that brawl to get out of hand like it did. But I just wanted to get your take on that.
Well, you know what, fights in baseball have been going on since the beginning of it, and it was always interesting to see a bench clearing brawl where everybody comes running out. You got guys running out from the bullpen for absolutely no reason. It was kind of a spectacle to see. It never really caused any problems. I mean, they peeled everybody apart and, went on with it. But with that being said, I do think that they need to do something about it. Because it's not doing anything for the game. If you got a problem with somebody, it's one thing, but you also don't see it very often either. So that's probably why baseball hasn't done anything about it. Is because it's not a widespread thing. It's not happening every other week. It's just one of those things that it's dumb, but are they going to do anything about it? No. Should they? Yes. But for now, I think they'll just kind of ride it out.
Yeah, so even if Major League Baseball doesn't do anything about it, I'm a little bit surprised that these teams don't do anything about it. That the managers and the rest of the coaching staff don't hold those benches down and kind of keep everything calm on there. Especially when you're looking at the suspensions that were handed out from it. You got Royals pitcher Ventura had a 7-game suspension. Edison Volquez got a 5-game suspension. And then you had a couple of relievers get suspensions too for 2 games on there. And the same thing with the White Sox. Sale and got 5 games on there. I think it's more of a detriment to those teams to have pitchers in their rotation go down and have to backfill that with the bullpen.
Well, and that's the worst part about it for these teams is it was a dumb fight. They've had these problems with the 2 teams, but it seems kind of harsh that they're going to throw out those kind of suspensions for those pitchers who might, next time, maybe they don't fight because they don't want to get suspended for 7 games. But I think that was kind of a reaction to everybody saying, hey, we need to stop this because it's dumb. So I think they were just trying to make a statement. The league was making a statement and saying, hey, don't do that again because it's creating bad press for us. But speaking of fighting, I do have a question for you. It's another hot button issue that's been going on. Pete Rose is trying to fight his way back into the get on the Hall of Fame ballot and get back in there. What are you thinking, man?
I want Pete Rose to be in the Hall of Fame. I think Pete Rose should be reinstated, but I think Pete Rose needs to get out of his own way. He comes out and says, yeah, I bet on sports games, and that was to sell the book. But now he's going around and saying, I never bet on baseball.
Yeah, he's back and forth. And I toss this around morally all the time. It's, you know what? He didn't do anything he didn't cheat in the game. All he did was bet on baseball. But you don't bet on baseball. That's how it is. So I toss this back and forth a lot. And you know what? When it comes down to it, I do think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Or if not, at least give him a shot at getting in the Hall of Fame. Because he was an excellent player. One of the best baseball players we'd ever seen.
Well, I think that's his saving grace on the matter. You know, if he'd quit lying about it and be 100% truthful about it, no one can say that Pete Rose was out there throwing games. I mean, go back and watch the dude play. He was 100% all the time. The dude loves to play the game, and he was great at it. You never saw him sandbag anything. I think that's his saving grace on the matter. There's a lot of talk about, because the All-Star game being in Cincinnati this year, that's the perfect time for the commission to come out and reinstate him. Man, I don't know if that's going to happen. That's a little bit early in his tenure as commish to kind of go out and do something like that.
No, and it's such a, like I said, it's a hot button issue, and if you think that someone's going to come out right away and give him the okay to go, that's not going to happen. A lot of people say it in this perspective of, I don't think he'll be alive when he gets voted into the Hall of Fame, and I think that's definitely the truth. And putting it into terms like that, I don't think it's the right time to put him back on or reinstate him because it's in Cincinnati. I think that's kind of a cop-out, and you know, it's tough. I wouldn't want to have to make that decision as a commissioner because it's just, I don't know that it's going to end well however he does it.
And that kind of bums me out, you mentioning that he's probably not going to get a chance to see himself going to the Hall of Fame. He'll be gone before that. And that kind of bums me out. Like that's at the end of the day, I guess that's more punishment than this whole limbo he's been in for decades now. You know, not knowing where he's going. I think, man, that's the ultimate punishment. Is he wants to see himself go in the Hall of Fame so bad, and he's probably not going to be here to see that.
Yeah,
he'll eventually get in. I think that's probably a given, but he's not going to be the one to see it.
No, and you know what? I think the Hall of Fame is unfortunately kind of a joke. They've been doing some really weird things, and if you ask me, I don't think that anybody who's actually cheated at the game should ever be allowed to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think Barry Bonds should be ever be able to get in. Anybody who used steroids, they shouldn't be able to get in. And with that being said, maybe that kind of makes me think that Pete Rose shouldn't get in either because he didn't do it the right way. The only saving grace for him is he bet on the game as a manager. He didn't bet on the game as a player. So you kind of look at it a little bit differently, you know. One hand versus the other. It's hard to say. But there's this whole argument about, well, what did you do before you cheated? Or what did you do before you knocked yourself out of the running? I don't know. It's so back and forth. It's really kind of like, do you even want to play? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think there's any need to be confused about it. And that's the sad thing. People that argue for these steroid era guys coming in, they cheated. Taking those drugs was an enhanced their performance. That's cheating. What Pete Rose did was wrong, and yeah, it's against the rules. It's all that stuff, but it wasn't cheating. It never held a competitive advantage for anybody or anything like that. So,
and that's my point exactly. Is it's tough you have to compartmentalize one thing versus the other, and if you cheated, you just shouldn't be able to be in the Hall of Fame. You're a cheater. And
it irritates me that guys use the Pete Rose situation. They're going to use that to say, well, you know, Pete Rose, it's not the same thing, man. He didn't cheat. And I think that bums me out too, along with him not probably seeing himself go in, is now they're going to use his name to try to get guys like Bonds and Palmeiro, these guys, into the Hall of Fame.
Great players, you know what I mean? Just, if you're going to cheat, you're going to take it into your own hands that you're probably not going to get into the Hall of Fame because you cheated. And if you have to cheat to get somewhere in a game, then you're probably not doing it right in the first place. But enough of speaking of the cheating, I wanted to throw in one more point, an interesting one. Do you think that Todd Helton will ever get into the Hall of Fame?
Oh man, that's tough. I think, yeah, that's a tough one. I obviously hope he will. I don't know if he's got the numbers. I think not having a ring hurts him too. I think he gets kind of left out on there. I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to say he gets in.
Yeah, I don't think he will get in. And, it really bums me out because Todd Helton never cheated. He was a great player, Definitely the best player that the Rockies have ever seen. And people like Dante Bichette and Larry Walker are in the same boat. They're saying that they're not going to get into the Hall of Fame because they played half their games at Coors Field for their career. Are you kidding me? So are they cheating because they're playing at Coors Field? No. They're getting a lot more hits. Yes. But so are all the other players who come in and play. If we're going to talk about Barry Bonds or Mike Piazza or any of these guys possibly getting into the Hall of Fame, well, they played a lot of games at Coors Field. They hit a lot of home runs there. It just kind of bums me out. You're talking about kicking out people, keeping them out of the Hall of Fame who didn't cheat because of where they had their career, but then you're going to talk about throwing in people who cheated and or, Pete Rose's case, maybe bet on baseball. It seems like a backwards system and almost to the point of why do we even have it if it's not going to be done right?
I hope these guys that want to push these steroid era players, these cheaters, into the Hall of Fame, I hope that helps a guy like Todd Helton out. Maybe these old crusty baseball voters, Hall of Fame voters, will look at that and they'll want to resist putting those guys in, and in turn a guy like Helton gets a better shot at it because they're going to look at him and say, here's Helton playing basically same era, had great numbers, wasn't cheating, and you gotta think that maybe helps out a little bit as those guys want to push back against that, and they're going to start putting in guys who did it the right way regardless of maybe their stats being inflated because at Coors Field are not having the same stats as guys that are already in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I agree, but I think until they change the process and get people a little bit more unbiased, maybe, into voting for the people going in, you're just never going to see that type of response. It's just the same people get kicked out every single year. This guy makes it in, this guy doesn't. It just needs to change the system, and maybe things would look a little bit better for the Hall of Fame.
Do you think Hall of Fame voting should be based on stats, or should it be kind of a lifetime of work? Off the field, on the field, stats, all that stuff. I
think they should put everything in it. I mean, if you look at people who play the game right, they do everything really well. They have a great fan base, people who everybody looks up to. They should get into the Hall of Fame, even if they don't have the greatest, if they're not the most home runs or they're not. If you got a guy who just played the game right and was an excellent player, put him in the Hall of Fame. Don't put the guy in who cheated and hit 100 home runs in a season. Of course, we know that didn't happen, but I'm just saying that, look at a guy, judge the guy. If he's Hall of Fame worthy, throw him in there. Don't keep it such of a high-class thing where you got to have a record to get in.
And there's got to be some responsibility on the voters' part, too. There's, all this talk about baseball being a dying sport and kids not being into it the way they have been in the past. And I think if you're a writer, if you're part of any part of that process, I think you almost have to do your part for the game and put guys like Helton in who represented baseball the right way. A guy that kids can look up to and say, hey, that's how you play ball. It's working hard and coming out and doing the right things every day. So I think those writers need to take a look at that too and have a little bit of responsibility for the future of the game.
Absolutely, man. That's very well put. I think it does come down to the people who are voting. Give guys a shot. That's all we're saying. Give them a shot to get in, even if they weren't the best player in the league for 10 years in a row. It just needs to happen.
Yeah, it's the Baseball Hall of Fame. You want to put guys in who represented baseball well. I think that's the future of the voting. The stats and everything, all that is obviously going to be part of the game. It always has been, always will be, and we're getting even more numbers now on it. But I think baseball as a whole, being able to represent that, I think that says something, and it should be part of that voting process.
All right, man. Well, that's enough of the Hall of Fame talk. We could sit here and talk about that all day long. And probably say the same thing about 50 times, but it's that time in our show here where we're going to go into our Homer segment, which I don't know about you, it's my favorite segment because we get to talk about Colorado teams. One thing that's not so much fun to talk about, though, is what's the Nuggets going to do with their coach next year?
So the newest development on that is Scotty Brooks getting fired out of Oklahoma City. Runs the same type of offense that Melvin Hunt wants to run, fast-paced, up and down the floor, full-court game on there. I don't know if that wouldn't be a bad pickup, even though I'd like to see Melvin Hunt maybe get that job. If a guy like Scotty Brooks is out there, I'm okay with having him here too. Mike D'Antoni's still floating around out there. I just hate the idea of Mike D'Antoni being here. I think Scotty Brooks has a track record of getting the best out of his bench players. When you look at guys like Collison, Harden was Sixth Man of the Year, and Harden's a beast. But he has kind of a history of developing those role players, which the Nuggets aren't ever going to get that big name splash guy in free agency. It's going to have to be something they draft out of there. So having good bench players and being able to coach a team of role players into the playoffs is something he has experience with a little bit. And obviously he had Westbrook and Durant, and that helps. But I think he's got the tools to develop a team and be able to run it with the lack of talent they have compared to other teams in the West.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked to see Scotty Brooks get fired from OKC. I thought that was kind of an odd move for them, being that they missed out by one game. I mean, you know, he was there for 7 years, and then they just up and fired him. But
yeah, and you didn't have Durant and Westbrook on the floor together all that much. I didn't really understand it either. I don't know what went on there. Maybe the players had something to do with it. Westbrook and Durant didn't want him around. I don't see that.
I know a lot of guys in Denver have been talking about it, saying that they don't think Scotty Brooks is the right pick. I actually think he might do really well here. The only thing that I have is there was so much, discord in the Nuggets this year. Would he be able to come in and fix all those problems, or would you run into another Brian Shaw situation where there just wasn't a whole lot of cohesion in the team, and that you could see it on the court?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know. When you listen to Melvin Hunt around town here, the dude's fired up. He's a kind of a happy-go-lucky type guy. He's a player's coach. He likes to go out there and have fun. He lets those guys go out and run their offense and just kind of have fun, play Nuggets basketball. I think there's something to be said probably if Scotty Brooks doesn't have that same mentality and same personality. I could see, just him being another guy out there that the players get sick of listening to and kind of sandbag it like they did this year.
Well, one thing I wanted to throw it out at you is Melvin Hunt, when he came in as interim, he did very well for the first 7 games or so. And then a little bit of his inexperience started to show as they lost, quite a few more games. Now, I don't know if that was just the team kind of tanking to get a little bit better lottery pick. It didn't seem like that. I think Melvin Hunt really did want to win. Do you think that going forward his inexperience is going to be a little bit of a hindrance as far as a head coaching job if he were to stay?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's probably going to be the case. I think the Nuggets are a little snake bitten picking up Brian Shaw, who was a great assistant coach under Phil Jackson and has been in the league a long time. You can say the same thing about Melvin Hunt, and I think they're going to look at Melvin Hunt and have flashbacks of Brian Shaw and that whole experience that went down. The other thing is, I think the Cronkies want to make a splash with a big name, with a guy like Scotty Brooks or Mike D'Antoni. So unfortunately, we keep saying this every week, I don't think Melvin Hunt's going to get the shot on that. Something else I wanted to bring up, and this is a little bit off topic, but it still relates to the Nuggets. Did you know Brian Shaw was a very, very competent bass angler?
I did not know that.
He fishes Quincy like 3-4 times a week.
Huh, interesting.
So me and Chris like to do a lot of bass fishing. One of our favorite holes is Quincy Reservoir. So there's a good shot we can get out there and fish with Brian Shaw. I guess his son fishes a ton with him too.
Huh, that's pretty cool. I mean, just to get out there and fish with a guy like Brian Shaw, that'd be kind of fun.
Okay, so you see Brian Shaw out there. You gonna ask him what went down? Ask for the dirty details. What happened here in Denver?
Oh man, I don't know. I feel like if it were me, I wouldn't want people asking me about that while I'm out fishing. I just want to be fishing. So, no, I probably wouldn't ask him. I would say what's up, but I definitely, I'm not digging in, that's for sure.
All right, man, let's go ahead and switch topics over. Let's get back to your bread and butter. Let's get a little bit more in depth into what's going on with the Rockies.
Well, the Rockies have had a pretty good start to the season. They're second in the division behind the Dodgers, sitting at 10-8. They lost last night to the Giants, but they won the first game, so we'll see what happens today if they actually play. Like I said, it's raining, has been all night. They were swept by the Dodgers, which is it is and it is. It's good and it's bad. The Dodgers are just playing so well right now. They split 2 with the Padres, came in. That was nice to see them. They lost the first 2. I started thinking, because they lost 5 in a row, I started to get that little bummed out idea going on, like, oh, here we go again. They've already started losing. But they bounced back fairly well. Sitting at 10-8, you know what? All they've got to do is hang around there. Be a 500 club, at least, if not a little bit higher. And I'll tell you what, I think with this team that they got this year, they've got a chance. Have you been watching Nolan Arenado out there, man? That kid is insane. You just don't have a better third baseman in all of baseball. I'm going to say that hands down. The plays that he makes are absolutely insane. And then you got 2 other Gold Gloves with Tulo and DJ LeMahieu on the rest of the infield, and a very, very, very good first baseman. So all you got to do is get out there, pitch, and let your defense, handle the game. And I think they have a good shot of being up there in the division when it comes the end of the season.
Yeah, I'd like to have seen them take at least a game from the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are just so hot right now, and they're playing, Dodger baseball with that payroll that they have. So you can understand them not taking a game out of there, but I still would like to have seen it. I like the fact they're bouncing back after the 5 losses in a row. I felt the same way after the 5th loss. It's all right. So football, when does that start up? But the bounce back has brought that hope back to me a little bit on there. Talking about Arenado, these guys on TV are saying he is the best third baseman they have ever seen.
Oh yeah,
and that's where the conversation starts. There's not anything. They're not comparing him to anybody. There's no, but and maybe it's Arenado is the best third baseman they have ever seen in baseball.
Which is kind of funny, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning of the episode. He was the product of being built up throughout the organization. They even held him back a little bit when they knew he was going to be a star MLB player, a star third baseman, and they held him back because they didn't think he was mature enough yet. They didn't think he was ready, so they held him back. It upset him, but you know what? It paid off, because that kid, he's going to be a star. Whether it's with the Rockies or a team that's going to, take him later, who knows? This kid is going to be a Hall of Famer if everything goes well at the end of his career.
I think that's the fun thing about rooting for the Rockies, about being here with the Rockies in town, is they have that culture of developing players. In the gate, coming onto the field for the players, they have this slogan painted up on the wall, and it says servant leadership. Everybody matters every time. And there's a lot to be said about the Rockies having faith in their players and their coaching staff and the whole organization, everybody doing their job, everybody being respected and given the time to develop on there. So being a Rockies fan, you get to know these guys when they're in AAA better than I think probably most teams do, because you're sitting there and you're waiting for these players to develop. Now, it leads to a lot of heartache. And every summer we end up, feeling broken up about the Rockies and everything. But I think that's just part of being a Rockies fan is just waiting to develop these good players and hoping that they stick around and build something for the future.
And, one of the things that I think we should look at is I don't think the pitching is going to be the problem this year. It's not the best pitching in the league, but I think they're going to pull themselves together enough to hang in there. Right now I'm looking at the outfield, and I think the outfield is your biggest problem for the Rockies right now. And so I think that they should look into that. Drew Stubbs is playing, he's a great defenseman, but man, he has been playing awful at the plate. He can't get a hit. He can't buy a hit. Cargo hit his first home run, his second home run, last night, but his first home run in a lot of games, and he hasn't been swinging the bat very well. And Charlie Blackmon, who I've seen miss a few pretty routine fly balls out in the outfield, it just doesn't seem like they have a whole lot of cohesion out there. And the outfield is kind of struggling with the bat. And generally, you want your outfielders to be the ones producing in the middle of the lineup. Especially when you got Cargo hitting sixth, you know that something's wrong. And so I think the infield is great, probably one of the best infields, if not the best in baseball. The pitching staff is down towards the bottom, but I think they're gonna fight. They're all young kids, minus Jorge De La Rosa and Kendrick. But De La Rosa came back after getting shelled his first outing and pitched a really good one last night. So I think these kids are going to be fine in the pitching. We just need to stiffen up that outfield a little bit and go with that. Especially we lost Willeen Rosario. He went back down to AAA. Albuquerque, which I thought was great. Kind of tweeted out a joke that Walt Weiss must have been listening to the Sportscast last week, because I was saying that last week that they needed to kind of find something different for him. But if we could just maybe pull up an outfielder, get somebody new and fresh out there, the Rockies might surprise people this year.
Yeah, it feels kind of weird. I thought we weren't talking about the Rockies there for a second, because you actually said the pitching staff wasn't going to mess it up this year, and I agree with you. It's been surprising that they've held up, and I like having the young guys out there pitching, because let's face the facts, they're a little bit more fearless than those old guys. They're just going out there trying to stay in the league, and hopefully they're having a little bit of fun with the Rockies doing that on there. It's weird to talk about the bats being the problem instead of the pitching staff. So I don't know. That's kind of a plus or minus, because those bats can get hot at any point in time, but it's kind of a bummer not having them now.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, a slump is only going to last so long. Eventually, they're gonna break out of that, and things will be fine. But when it comes down to it, something we talked about in these last couple episodes is, do you trade Cargo and Tulo? Right now, I wouldn't trade either of them. Tulo, unfortunately, as much as I do want to see him go, he's a part of that infield that's making plays and doing all that, and his bat's been really good. So there's no sense in getting rid of him. And Cargo, the only thing that I think keeps him here is the fact that when he's in right field and a ball gets hit to him, you don't see many people try for home. Everybody's so afraid of his arm because it is so good that they're stopping at third base. So even though he's in a slump, I'm not down on the guy too hard. I just think that we need to get out of those slumps and maybe get ourselves somebody who's going to work a little bit harder out in the outfield. Don't get rid of Dickerson. I like that kid. He's been hitting on fire and knocking home runs, and he does need to work on his defense just a little bit out there. But as a whole, I think the Rockies have a really good staff this year. It'll be fun to watch them.
I think with the Tulo and Cargo thing, maybe you don't trade Cargo, but you still got to get something for Tulo. All these years the Rockies have spent developing him, he's not sticking around, man. So as painful it is to see the Rockies kind of make their way, and so far this season looks pretty hopeful and looks like it's going to be fun to watch them going in a little bit deeper than they usually do. You still got to look for the future of the organization, and if Tulo leaves and you don't get anything for that, I think that's a bummer. I still think you have to trade the guy.
Nah, well, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't think that they're going to trade him just because they don't have anybody in the organization who can take up any of that slack. But you know what? We'll see. It might happen. It might not. But anyway, well, that's going to be the end of our podcast for this week. Once again, we'd like to shout out to at DInfinityX on Twitter. Does all of our video work for us, posting and whatnot. At FR Cowboys and at Sporting Banjos. Follow us on Twitter. Give us some comments. Check out our draft for your burger and give us an idea of who's going to win that. Tater tots, French fries, potato chips, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, thanks again, John. Chris, you have a good week. We'll see you guys next week.
Next weekend. Thanks.